Cheetah Men, a necessity for gracious living. As a mature woman, I have lived a long, fulfilling life full of excitement and adventure. I have sampled many delicious delights and strolled along beautiful moonlit beaches, but sometimes you fancy something a little less pure. I have begun to develop dark desires to experience something new and a little more questionable, even if it is entirely unauthorized. I am talking about a forbidden fruit, one of which, although very frowned upon, I am still desperate to try out. So, keeping all of this in mind, I am Lady Decade and I am looking for cheetah men. Few things out there have a worse reputation than cheetah men. So, if this is true, why do I crave cheetah men so badly? I guess there is just something alluring about playing naughty games, even if the reality is the actual experience will be terrible. I am not alone in my thinking either, as you look online and see other people looking for cheetah men everywhere. The demand for cheetah men is high, no matter how wrong this seems. So, what is going on here? Is everyone sick in the head? Well, kind of. Generally, people are happy to pay out for a crappy game to complete their crappy game collection. What? You thought I was talking about something else? In your dreams. Earlier this week, I spoke about why I am seeking a cougar boy. There seems to be some weird correlation in gaming between rare oddities and big cats. Jaguars, lynxes, cougar boys, cheetah men. People extract sick pleasure from all of this. But while most are familiar with the disgusting cheetah men at a surface level, there is more to understand about cheetah men beyond reputation. The game was thrust into the limelight online to an audience larger than ever in an episode of Angry Video Game Nerd in the early 2010s. But before we dig deeper into cheetah men, we first need to discuss the infamous Action 52, the controversial NES multi-cart that the game could be experienced on. First released in North America in 1991, Action 52 for the NES was developed and published by Active Enterprises. The owner and founder of the company, Vince Perry, a businessman from Miami, Florida, was the mastermind behind the existence of this game. In an article in the Miami Herald from the 12th of July 1993, published around the time of the Sega Genesis version of the game's release, he tells the story of Action 52's conception. It outlines that at 51, Vince Perry called himself a businessman and professional investment banker for a long time, but it took fatherhood to help him find out what could be the business of his life. What an absolute banker! Perry believed his products offered 52 games for the price of one, and came up with the idea through his 9-year-old son, stating, "Having a 9-year-old, I had to buy a lot of video games, and it cost me a fortune. A decent Sega or Nintendo costs $55 to $60. I said there's got to be a way to do this cheaper." Then he notes that a breakthrough would come by accident. "I happened to see my son playing an illegal product made in Taiwan that had 40 games on it. The whole neighbourhood went crazy over it. I figured I'd do it legally. It's obvious when you see something like that. You know there's something there." Years later, arcadeattack.co.uk would catch up with Mario Gonzalez, one of the men designing Action 52. He mentions that he first met Perry while working part-time while attending college as a sound engineer for a small recording studio in Miami, Florida. Mario overheard Vince telling the story about his son's Taiwanese game and his wanting to make a cartridge and create 52 original games. "I told Vince that a few of my friends and me were into making games, and that it sounded like a great opportunity for me. This sparked Vince's interest, but he said he wanted proof. I contacted my friends and we made Vince a Tetris clone called Megatris on our Amiga computer. Vince was impressed with the graphics and the sound of the Amiga and agreed to hire us for the project." Gonzalez worked primarily as part of a team of 4, functioning as the game's core designer. Gonzalez created characters and story elements and composed music, while others worked as programmers and contributed pixel art and level design. The young, hungry team quickly agreed to work on the game with a tight schedule, taking on 1 week of training on using an NES dev kit. He comments, "I knew the task at hand was very daunting given the time constraints, so I came up with the idea of only creating a handful of engines and a template for the graphics to facilitate a smoother development cycle." Being the complete banker that Perry was, after a good solid bank, he would use his overseas banking connections to raise $5 million from private backers in Europe and Saudi Arabia. But with the whole team having little experience in the gaming industry, including Perry, the end product was rough. Gonzalez adds that, "In an odd way, all of the unpolished, errors and everything wrong with the cartridge led to more of its cult status than if we would have released 52 completed yet mediocre games. Anything less awful than what it was may have just quietly faded away into time." Building on this strange story, if you remember, Action 52 cartridges would also look incredibly weird compared to other software available on the platforms. Perry's company didn't pay to have Nintendo or Sega license them either. In regards to his business dealings, Perry has gone on record to clarify that, "We are unauthorized, but not illegal." That's right, there is nothing illegal about this at all. The whole thing's just questionable. Of all the games that could be enjoyed in Action 52, and I use the term enjoy very lightly, Cheetah Men is perhaps the most infamous. This is because not only does it sit as game number 52 on the menu, but it's the biggest and most ambitious game amongst the compilation, even if Cheetah Men is also a bad game. Clearly trying to piggyback off of the mass market success of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like Biker Mice from Mars, Street Sharks and more, the Cheetah Men 2 would try to cash in on the current craze of offering up teams of martial arts performing mutated animals. In fact, even the naming convention is similar. The Turtles were named after famous artists, and the Cheetah Men were named after different Greek gods, named Apollo, Hercules and Ares respectively. The game even features an opening cutscene laying out a plot for this ambitious but stupid game. The game tells us that the Action Game Master was at home playing his video game. Suddenly, an arm reached out of the TV and pulled him inside. When he looked up, he saw 3 gigantic yellow bodies. It was the Cheetah Men. Such glorious writing. He began to explain. The Cheetah Men told of the enemies here in the game world. They tell the Action Game Master, "Don't worry, we will finish the fight for you." The Cheetah Men ran off, and now, the Cheetah Men.
And now, a yak.
Wow. Whoever wrote this doesn't understand how to write or use ellipses. The title's questionable gameplay commences with the so-called Action Game Master never being mentioned again. Fortunately, Action 52 came with a comic book to provide more context to the story. The tale unfolds when a mad scientist, Dr. Morbis, kills a mother cheetah on an African hunting safari. He then abducts 3 of her cubs and takes them back to his lab. His experimentation results in their mutant transformation, with them turning on the man who killed their mother. From here, the Doctor responds to this by making an army of various human-animal hybrids to stop them. Captivating. From here, we would continue to mock the poor gameplay within the Cheetah Men, but that has already been done to death on YouTube. So I am more interested in discussing with you the even grander plans that Active Enterprises had for this property and everything else that happened behind the scenes. For example, remember that character called the Action Game Master from the game's intro, which quickly disappears from the game with no mention ever again? Well, Mario Gonzalez claims that the Action Game Master was meant to be the name of his originally conceived 50-second game on the Action 52 cartridge. This was supposed to be a final challenge where the player had to defeat all of the bosses from the 51 other games. Well into the project, Vince came to me and advised me he wanted a team similar to the Ninja Turtles. Since there was no arguing with Vince, we went with the Cheetah Men. Vince became enamoured with the characters and the story, and quickly began shifting the focus of the cartridge to having the Cheetah Men as the main selling point. Vince began to talk about a standalone game, toys, a cartoon, and maybe even a movie. Ridiculous concepts, which we will touch more on in a moment. Gonzalez and co. would only work on the original Action 52 cartridge for the NES, not the one that would later be released on the Sega Mega Drive. He states it's because Vince actually shelled out for a real studio when producing that version. Regarding Gonzalez mentioning Perry's intentions to try and turn Cheetah Men into a multimedia franchise, thankfully we can all find the proof we need online that outlines this grand, crazy plan. NESworld.com shows off some of the photos from back when such a push was in the works. In fact, Action Enterprises would even receive their own booth at the Consumer Electronics Show and set up quite an impressive stand for the event. The same website even documents that they found the company online who designed the booth, noting it was made of wood and had a few small office/meeting rooms on top of it while games were being displayed below. The maker of the booth said on their site, it was very solid made, not only for supporting the upper floor but also because it is torn down and rebuilt several times a year in different cities. Action 52 lore you didn't need to know, but now you do. In my opinion, the most interesting piece of history preserved from this event is the advertising pamphlet distributed that weekend, outlining the company's business plan, new products, and insane plans for the future. The front cover would describe Action 52 as phenomenal, and the inside of the pamphlet would hype the compilation cart like crazy, stating, imagine the happiness a child will have in playing a new game every week for a year, all at a fraction of the cost of other new games. It is the first new product to provide an economical way of obtaining many exciting games at one low price. Personally, I think the use of the word exciting was a bit of a stretch. But, as stated earlier, overhyping Action 52 is not even the most interesting part of this pamphlet. It is Action Enterprises' description of other things they had in the works, such as a promotion for their so-called main character, the Cheetah Men. They stated they were working on a 1-minute animated cartoon commercial for Disney quality. Let me repeat that. Disney quality. The most reputable animation studio on planet Earth at the time. What makes this even crazier is the 1-minute commercial was stated to be the forerunner to a planned nationally syndicated TV full-length children's cartoon show, which obviously never happened. Still, seeing such ambition around this meme-worthy trio of characters is amusing. As for the commercial, it did indeed air, but to call it Disney quality would be laughable. The animation would not even be Kellogg's quality, but closer to Mario and Zelda's CGI cutscene quality. What makes it funnier is the Cheetah Men's strange mix of accents. It sounds like we got an Italian-American who sounds like Sylvester Stallone, another one who sounds like a tubular Ninja Turtle, and then, weirdest of all, a British Cheetah Man? You can't make this stuff up. Have a listen.
I say, dear chap, shouldn't you go on a diet?
Are you talking to me? Maybe if these guys would make these holes bigger, I could fit easier, know what I'm saying?
Hey, man, I'll help you out.
No worries, no.
Still, Perry didn't want to stop with just one video game and cartoon. Cheetah Men, in his mind, deserved more. Way more, and would tout a complete electronically servo-controlled Cheetah Man outfit. They would tell readers that the costume was already being worked on in Hollywood, with live-action Cheetah Men therefore soon to be in attendance, making personal appearances at various trade shows and conventions worldwide. Perry thought the Cheetah Men would take over the world, getting right up there with the Ninja Turtles. Well, at least that was the dream that he was selling investors on. With Action 52 set to be coming to the Sega Mega Drive, they would also announce it was coming to the Super Nintendo, with a Cheetah Men 2 in the works on a single cartridge. The pamphlets would claim they would aim to make the Cheetah Men the most desired and merchandised items of Christmas 1993. Of course, with any intellectual property as important as Cheetah Men, action figures would be outlined to be coming too, stating that these would be available for immediate production and purchase orders for the Cheetah Men 6-inch action figures. Building on this, they would note that past this, 16-inch Cheetah Men rubber dolls would be produced, with them all being displayed at the New York Toy Fair, the London Toy Fair and Canadian Toy Show. Cheetah Men were going to take over the world. To further hook in investors, they would also mention that plans for a Cheetah Men clothing range and the entire comic book series were also being discussed. But perhaps most insane of all was a crazy game console, which I will likely dedicate an entire video to in the future. Yeah, that's right. Action Enterprises would state that they were researching and developing a system to enter the console wars themselves, but what they had in mind sounded like something a child would make up rather than something feasible. They would outline to investors that they wanted to make a portable, handheld 16-bit game console that could play NES games, Super Nintendo games, Sega Genesis ones, their own bespoke games, and ones that come on compact discs. The delusional claim was made that this would immediately give their new product a vast library of ready-made software. Oh yeah, did I mention that you can also watch television on the go on this handheld? The best way to describe this game console, that it would be the equivalent of when Homer Simpson was tasked with designing the perfect car. I mean, even if this was legal and possible, how much would that have cost?
What does this monstrosity cost?
$82,000! This monstrosity cost $82,000! I'm ruined!
This all actually happened. This game console would have sounded like the best thing ever to a child, but it sounds less feasible to an adult than the Intellivision Amico. So it's not surprising that it wouldn't be long before the company would go bankrupt. So, looking back at all of this, was all of this wackiness and pitches to investors some sort of scam? It's hard to know, as Vince Perry is a somewhat secretive individual who has disappeared from the limelight. In his Arcade Attack interview, Mario Gonzalez gives his take on all of this, stating, "Many give Vince a bad rap and accuse the whole Action 52 situation as some kind of scam. This is entirely wrong. Vince was a good businessman and he really believed in the concept of Action 52. The project's failure was only due to Vince's ignorance of the gaming industry and of video games altogether. He did not understand the vast array of variables that are required to make a successful video game. Quite honestly, at my young age, with the same lack of understanding, I was as much of a dreamer as Vince was. The only difference was that he dreamed in dollar signs, and I of being a game designer. He was a good boss." So, while I continue my best to feed my primal urges of finding Cheetah Men to enjoy, the likelihood of me ever finding a copy of Action 52 for a reasonable price is extremely low, so my dark desires to experience Cheetah Men, as far as playing an original copy at least, will likely remain just a sick fantasy. But despite this, it was certainly fun to learn way more about this forbidden fruit and the crazy plans surrounding the game. What may come as a shock is that the story of Cheetah Men 2 is an even crazier story, with a large chunk of it occurring in the 2010s. That's before we talk about the unreleased Cheetah Men 3 and the infamous Action Enterprises game console, so hit that subscribe button to not miss potential episodes covering those subjects. I am also a mature lady seeking subscribers, so help me reach my needs. Thanks, bye.